Boker Tov, good morning. Today is Friday, November 13th, Erev Shabbat, Parshat Chayei Sarah. And it's a week in a Parsha that's filled with a sense of loss, of somehow being denied the most important people in our lives, things in our life. With the opening story of the passing of Sarah Imenu, of our matriarch Sarah, and towards the end of the Parsha, the passing of Avraham Avinu, the death of our ancestral father Avraham, Abraham. And so if one could read the parasha in that sense, it's about all the loss and the things that have befallen us as we lose these great figures. And in certain ways, I'll tell you, I've been feeling that depth of loss this past week for the passing of the former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Rabbi Lord Sacks of blessed memory, who was taken from us at the young age of 72 after a bout with cancer that seemed to have come, at least for those of us who were not close, out of nowhere. And so I found myself drawn to want to explore a little bit of his teaching around the parashah, and it's really fascinating to me as I went through a number of his weekly Torah teachings, covenant and conversation for the past few years. He found himself drawn not to the verses about loss, but rather to the verses about blessedness. And specifically, Perek Chaf Dalet Pasuk Aleph. Once and again, he comes back to these verses. Avraham Zakein Ba Bayamim, and Avraham was old, well into his years. Badunai berachat Avraham bakol, and God blessed Avraham with everything. What does this mean? God blessed Avraham with everything. The Ibn Ezra explains, bakol, yes. Ba'orech yamim, with length of years. Ve'osher, and wealth. Ve'chavod, and honor. Uvanim, and children. Ve'zo kol chemdat adam, is that not all that a person really should desire in life? So that's, yes, in some objective way, we could look at the story and say Avraham is blessed, but we're struggling, really, if you step back, to understand, is it not the moment? Is it the moment to tell us this? Because Perek Chaf Dalet comes right after we learn about Sarah's death and Avraham's mourning for her, and then his needing to get up and to negotiate for a little parcel of a cave in which he can bury her. So that's the moment which you say Avraham was blessed with everything. It's a little strange. Rabbi Sacks takes it further. Rabbi Sacks really questions whether it's even true of Avraham. How could really say that Avraham was blessed with all? He makes the following comment that I won't quote it. I'll tell it to you outside. That God had promised Avraham seven times over that he would have Eretz Yisrael, and God had promised him that he would have, children that would number as the stars in the sky. And in fact, Avraham had no land, such that he had to really beg his way and negotiate his way to a small little parcel on which to bury Sarah. And he had two sons. One was not nachas for him, Yishmael, and the other was yet unmarried, and he was unable to see anything of the promise that God had of generations that would flow from him. So how could we say of Avraham that God blessed him with everything? And in fact, Avraham and Sarah endured a great many hardships over life. We might refer to them as the 10 trials of Avraham. But it was a hard life that this couple led. So what does it mean to tell us that God blessed him with everything? So here, it's interesting, and we can do an analysis, but often he's, in these series of Divrei Torah, he's drawn back to discussing the lives of Holocaust survivors and their capacity to not just survive, but even to build anew in a powerful way. In one piece, this is last year's Torah lesson, he quotes Edith who wrote a book called The Choice. She, together with her father and mother and sister, arrived at Auschwitz in 1944. She and her sister survived. The parents did not. And she wrote this. Early on in the book, this is his quote. Early on in the book, she makes an immensely important distinction between these two things: victimization, what happens to you, and victimhood, how you respond to what happens to you. This is what she says about the first, about victimization. We are likely to be victimized in some way in the course of our lives. At some point, we will suffer some kind of affliction or calamity or abuse caused by circumstances or people or institutions over which we have little or no control. This is life, and this is victimization. It comes from the outside. She obviously lived through the darkest version of this in the darkness of the Shoah, losing her family along with the other 6 million who perished. That's one form of victimization. That's victimization. On the other hand, it's victimhood. In contrast, victimhood comes from the inside. No one can make you a victim but you. We become victims not because of what happens to us, but when we choose to hold on to our victimization. We develop a victim's mind, a way of thinking and being that is rigid, blaming, pessimistic, stuck in the past, unforgiving, punitive, and without healthy limits or boundaries. One can be a victim without experiencing victimhood. We certainly know the truth of this statement, and so often in our lives, and even to this very moment in history, about whether or not some act has been taken against us, some calamity or abuse. At some point, we make a decision whether we live in it or we look forward. And in that case, then the victimization doesn't hold us. It doesn't have a hold on us. And we become what we make of ourselves and our future and our destiny. And so Rav Sacks wanted to argue of Avraham. He too could have seen himself as the victim in all that he experienced, all those 10 trials that he and Sarah endured, he endured. But then you make a decision to live with your purpose, with your why, as he describes in another part of this article. And when you live with your why and your sense of purpose, then you can yet say of yourself that I am blessed. God has blessed me with everything. That is the choice that we have before us. Whenever some form of challenge comes our way, do we say that we are victims and live in it, or do we rise above it in response? May God give each of us and everyone we know the capacity to not be victimized, or to live in victimhood, I should say, and to indeed feel and live out the blessings which are ours. May we do so this day and every day beyond. Shabbat Shalom.